At some point, I realized I wasn't tired because I was doing too much. I was tired because I'd been holding a position in everyone else's life that I never consciously chose. In systemic therapy, we don't ask, what's wrong with you? We ask, what role did this system need you to play? Because most people, they don't lose themselves randomly, they lose themselves relationally. Meaning you slowly abandon your needs, your voice, your identity just to stay connected. One of the biggest shifts for me was realizing this. Most of our patterns don't come from our personality. They come from the systems we learned how to survive in. Families, relationships, friend groups, workplaces, or even cultural expectations. And when people say, I don't know who I am anymore, what they're often describing is this. They've been organized around everyone else's needs for so long that their sense of self got absorbed into the system. In any system, stability matters. Systems organize themselves to maintain balance, what we call homeostasis. And one of the ways systems stay stable is by assigning roles, not formally, not consciously, but on how we relate to one another. Someone becomes the emotional regulator, the responsible one, the achiever, the peacekeeper, the one who doesn't need too much, the fixer. From a systemic perspective, these roles aren't flaws, they're adaptive responses. They help the system function. But what helps the system survive can slowly require one person to disappear inside of it. At first, the roles feel safe. And it comes with approval, predictability, belonging. But over time, the role stops being something you do and starts becoming who you actually are. You don't ask, what do I need? You ask, what will keep things steady? You don't notice your limits, you override them. You don't express your desires, you manage your expectations. From a systemic lens, this is what happens when a relational position replaces your self-definition. And eventually, people say, I feel lost. Not because they lack identity, but because their identity has been shaped in response to others. Let's talk about the strong one. So in therapy, I hear it as a function. Being the strong one often means you stabilized others' emotions, you contained distress, you adapted quickly, and you learned not to add strain. And that's a relational job. And it makes sense, especially in a system where vulnerability felt unsafe or unpredictable. However, when one person consistently holds the system together, they rarely get held themselves. And strength without reciprocity eventually turns into isolation. Systems resist change. Even healthy growth requires disruption. So when someone begins to outgrow a role, the system often pushes back. And this is where symptoms show up. And I've said this before, symptoms are not random. They're communication. Your body might start signaling through your shutdown, your irritability, emotional flooding, numbness, resentment, and the one I unfortunately know all too well, exhaustion. This isn't dysfunction. It's the system being challenged. Your body is saying, this role no longer fits the person I'm becoming. And your body gives a lot of warnings and signals. When someone says, I feel like I've lost myself, I hear, I've outgrown the position I once occupied. It's not pathology, that's development. In family systems, we expect discomfort when roles shift. The distress doesn't come from change itself. It comes from staying loyal to a role that no longer aligns with your stage of life. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? Systemic work invites different questions. What role did I learn to play? How did this role stabilize the system? What did it cost me? What would change if I stopped holding this position? Awareness is not passive, it's intervention. Because once a role is named, it can be renegotiated. And renegotiation doesn't mean abandonment, it means you have choice. Coming back to yourself doesn't mean leaving every system. It means shifting how you show up inside them. It looks like allowing others to feel discomfort, tolerating not being needed, noticing when you're regulating the room, letting relationships reorganize, and building capacity for mutuality. These moments feel uncomfortable. I'm gonna say that again. These moments feel uncomfortable because systems resist reorganization, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something new. I want you to sit with this question. What role am I still carrying that no longer fits who I am? You don't have to drop it all at once. You just have to notice it. Because naming the pattern is how systems begin to change. And that's what this is about. giving language to what you've always felt but never had the words for. If you want to keep exploring with me, subscribe, because next we're talking about what happens when systems resist your growth and how to stay regulated while you choose yourself anyway. Until next time.